because it doesn't happen one time, one place. It happens everywhere, and it's just a symptom of a much bigger issue. So, it's hot cocoa time. We are going to sit down, and my throat is not amazing, but I really wanted to talk anyway. So we're doing hot cocoa, and then extraordinarily, I have this in my fridge, which is a sprayable vegan cream. There we are. I don't know if it's still good. Oh, she struggles. It's just, okay, it's everywhere. Okay, well, fuck that. It's not good anymore. Okay. I'm gonna get you closer now. Hey. Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Gitte Marie, and this is as close as I ever come to having my own podcast. Anyway, today we're just gonna sit down and have a chat. I have a different couple of things on my mind, and I want to include you guys in them. I just got back from a festival last night, and I am tired, busted, done. I just want to stay in my apartment and just like rot. However, I'm leaving in 2 hours to go to a cottage island vacation with my partner and his family. And then I'm going to Copenhagen for a lecture, and then I'm going to France. It's not summer weather in Denmark at all. So while I was at the festival, I think I caught a little bit of a cold. Oh, it's good. Okay. So while I was at the festival, I did some content. I did a what I eat at the festival. I did a good and green sustainable initiatives. And then I did something about waste and trash. Now I try to be as eco-conscious when I go to events, because I try to be as eco-conscious as possible always. That's sort of just like my vibe. And is it possible to be zero waste at a festival? No, let's be fucking real. But it's possible to be low waste. It's possible to be more mindful and conscious. I was so happy to live in a camp with 12 other people that all took all their stuff with them when they left, and that always sort of collected trash, sorted waste, and made sure that our little square was clean. To the point where some of the festival volunteers came up to us on their inspection, sort of just walking the grounds, just like, you have such a clean camp. And the thing is, at Roskilde, you have different areas. You have a clean and silent, and then there is a clean out loud camp, which is obligated to clean, but you can play as loud music as you want. And then there is the regular, standard, common ground camp, which was where I was at. Here, you're not obligated to clean, and you're not obligated to consider noise, music, any kind of the sort. So you can just do whatever you want. And the thing is, when you say that cleaning is mandatory, you sort of just encourage wasteful behavior. So I posted a video showing how my neighborhood looked like when we were leaving. We packed up all our stuff, and this was just like me panning the camera around in my near surroundings. And I got a lot of really interesting reactions to it, both on Instagram and on TikTok especially. And it's always so funny to me that the comments you get on TikTok and the demographic that sees my content on TikTok, vastly different from YouTube and Instagram. A lot of the people watching my TikToks are Danes, and they're very young. And a lot of them had tents that were featured in the video. So yeah. And my overall criticism is that, well, obviously consumers have responsibility. People are never actually given a carte blanche to just be as wasteful and trash places and leave mess behind. But this is not only on the guests, because when you create a structure where this is allowed, you encourage it. And there are so many layers to where the responsibility lies. We'll get back into that as well. So this was just as much for the people as it was for the festival. I would love to see how you could innovate and optimize every area so that it's mandatory to clean. A lot of people that watched this tent video on TikTok were pointing out that, well, when you pay for your ticket, you also pay for the cleaning of the space, which then gives you carte blanche to just be as messy as you want, because you paid for the cleaning. And this is so far from how I live in the world and how I experience life. Because even if I knew people were gathering up my waste and trying to sort it, I could never just leave things on the ground hoping that it would be saved. I also talked briefly to some of the volunteers that said, well, from the silent and from the clean camps, it's much easier to sort the waste, but here it's very difficult. Like at the common ground, it was very difficult to sort any of the waste because everything was just left. I do know that there are some organizations that take all the things, like a lot of the things at least, some of the things I should say, some of the stuff that's not broken, and donate it or reuse it or upcycle it. I know a brand called Our Shift that makes really cool clothing from discarded tents from Roskilde Festival, which is really cool. So there are definitely people that are trying to optimize this process. The problem is the quantity of waste that's left behind. There's no NGO, no brand that can ever use that material because the infrastructure it requires to recycle it, to gather it, to collect it, to clean it, it's really resource intensive, both impact wise but also just economically. Like, it requires a lot of money. When you buy a ticket or an entry fee to anything, it doesn't give you carte blanche to just like be as gross as you want. Even though you pay for a hotel room, you also wouldn't leave it completely trashed unless you are a trash person. I knew exactly how wasteful this would be. I have seen it previously as well, but like standing in the middle of it, I am so confused why you would leave these things behind. It was like perfectly functional inflatable mattresses. It was completely functional tents, coolers, pillows, blankets. I saw a whole ass couch. I saw a whole ass solid wood dining table. So many different things that were left there because people couldn't be bothered to bring them home. And that mentality is also on consumers. I think it's very irresponsible, lazy, and even immature to just go, well, no one told me I couldn't do this, so I'm just gonna do it. Anyway, one thing I thought that was pretty fun about this is that I just posted this. I don't know who left the waste behind. I was living in it. I was annoyed by it. I posted it. A lot of people shared my video or commented on the video that these were the same people that are gluing themselves to highways, that are shaming boomers for flying, that are generally speaking up about climate change. I have no data that indicates that those two demographics overlapped at any point. I think it's very important when we talk about people of a certain generation that we acknowledge that, as in any generation, some people are wasteful and don't care, and some people call to action because they're really bothered by the status quo. It was the case with older generations, it's the case with younger generations. And I think it's a little bit concerning that we are, or at least some people are, so eager to discredit the climate movement, especially the climate movement that's run by young people, because other young people are wasteful. Honestly, I just think it's an excuse to keep doing what you do because the people that feel like or sound like they know better, because they do, are hypocrites. If we tell ourselves that the people that are calling for action or calling for change are hypocrites, it's much easier to continue doing what we do without any sort of self-reflection. Do some people think self-reflection is like some sort of torture? Because it's honestly really healthy and everyone should try it. Often when I make something about specifically consumer action, or perhaps it's not even consumer actions, it's actually consumer fault. Whenever we talk about the fact that, well, we have a buy and throw away mentality that's obviously encouraged by the structures we live in, capitalism, and corporations and companies benefiting from that mentality. It didn't just grow out of thin air and we didn't come up with it. A bigger system did. However, we live within it, we have agency. We can just choose to not throw away our things. So there is consumer agency, which means that there is consumer fault. But it's very difficult often to navigate that conversation without saying at the same time that, well, consumers carry all the responsibility. Obviously, that's not the case. While we talk about what consumers are not doing, that's great. We also have to acknowledge that this behavior benefits other people. By other people, I mean people that make money from selling cheap shit that's designed to be discarded after 7 days, and then people buy a new festival kit next year. This is fast camping, we also have fast fashion, we also have fast furniture. It's basically the case in every single consumer category. And a lot of people are very eager to point out that, well, companies, stores, brands shouldn't be offering these types of products. Now that the products are here, I can use them however I want because they're responsible for the products existing in the first place. And that's true, but you are responsible for how big of a lifespan this product has. Overall, planned obsolescence is also an issue, and when we buy really cheap shit, we shouldn't really be expecting it to last a really long time. However, there are tons of examples of people buying cheap products, cheap fast fashion, cheap camping gear, and having these things last a really long time. But when we know that these things are cheap, we are much more likely to not care what happens to them. When we know that these things are cheap, we know we can also just replace them really easily. So we don't maintain them, we don't take care of them, and that's why they end up going to waste, because it's easier to leave things behind, it's easier to replace rather to repair. And there is an aspect of consumer agency and consumer responsibility in that. I think on so many levels, responsibility to act sustainably rests on both the consumers, on the political sector, and on the industries and corporations supplying us with products. But we have to work together, guys. I've been ranting for so long, my chocolate's cold. Anyway, so every time I talk about consumer responsibility, and you know, I do quite a lot, because a lot of the things that I post about is like my personal experiences. It's what I think I can do, what I think we can do, because I'm a consumer, hello. So that's my perspective. I don't represent an organization, I don't represent a political party, I don't represent a brand or corporation, I represent me. So that's also my perspective. And we have to be able to have that conversation without instantly deflecting it into, well, other people are responsible for these things being here in the first place. I also saw a lot of people saying that, well, this is not a climate issue, this is a local environment issue. And oftentimes environment and climate are used interchangeably, but they mean vastly different things. However, even when we trash field in Denmark, that has a global impact, because it doesn't happen in a vacuum. The mess, the trash, the garbage doesn't happen in a vacuum. And when we design a system where things are so easily disposable and so easily replaceable, that is reflected in a global impact, because there is a whole ass supply chain available to create these products, which means that we need to extract more material to make these products. And there are plastic, polyester, metal, glass that needs to be produced. And these very cheap items are very rarely made with recycled materials, because recycling is still more expensive than extracting virgin material. So yes, even though we have a local issue, it's reflected in global impact, because it doesn't happen one time, one place. It happens everywhere, and it's just a symptom of a much bigger issue. So, my doorbell just ring? I don't know. And my last hurdle. This is not something that's exclusive to this situation. This is not something that's exclusive to any situation. Actually, I've been in a lot of debates and conversations where this has sort of been the main issue or the main critique. So when I post about consumer trash waste, a mentality or like a very concrete problem, which tends on a field left behind, very direct problem, I get a lot of responses critiquing the fact that I am focusing on this issue when there are much more pressing issues at hand, both in the world in general, but also in terms of sustainability, because this specific issue is not the biggest issue in sustainability. This competitive way of thinking that unless you are in the either best or worst position, if you're not talking about the worst issue or the most important issue, we shouldn't be talking about this at all. We should be talking about the most important issue or hearing this from the perspective of the people in the most important position. That way of deflecting means that no one can ever say anything ever. And that's very convenient if you don't want to self-reflect at all. If you don't want to think about an issue that you might play some part in, have some agency in, and some responsibility in, it's very convenient to think or say that this is not as important as other issues, so we shouldn't be looking at this issue, we should be looking at the more important issue. So let's talk about the most important issue as soon as we figure out what the fuck that is. Because I can say that the most important issue when it comes to sustainability, climate change, climate collapse, any kind of issue related to planet, climate, pollution, would be the fossil fuel sector. Fossil fuel sector doesn't just exist in a vacuum where they only supply fossil fuels to the fossil fuel sector. Does that make sense? The fossil fuel industry has its tiny roots in every single industry on the planet. It's everywhere, from the production of consumer goods to our food systems. It's in our clothing, it's in the pharmaceutical industry, it's in our electrical grid, it's in our water, it's everywhere. So we can't just isolate the most important issue and only talk about that. So we can spend a lot of time talking about what the most important issue is, or And this is my alternative solution. We can acknowledge that sustainability and solutions isn't just one golden major solution. If we want to solve the issues related to pollution and climate change, we have to acknowledge that there isn't one solution, there are millions. There are millions of solutions because there are millions of problems. And while a lot of them are related to the fossil fuel industry, that doesn't mean that the solution to all these issues are the same. I feel like I could just put an auto response on a lot of my comments saying, well, people can care about more things, Susan. So whenever we talk about leaving trash behind at a festival, we also talk about animal agriculture, we also talk about the fossil fuel sector, we also talk about fast fashion, we also talk about Schmenschmeid, we also talk about oppression, we can keep going. We don't hyper focus on one specific thing, like me in 2016 where I only talked about straws. We have grown, we have evolved from that. You know, we really truly always wanted to be everyone else's fault. There's really no way around that how consumers act also have a massive impact. Not the biggest impact, but nonetheless. I think a lot of people are very eager to believe or think or tell themselves that all consumers are just agency-less elements of nature that go in whatever direction the capitalist river flows. However, there are always options of doing better, of opting out, of doing something different. It takes work. It takes acknowledgement that something you're doing is not okay. And that's not sitting well with a lot of people. But a lot of the things we do are not amazing. A lot of the way we treat materials is not amazing. Is it just our fault? No, but is it also our fault? Yes. I would love to hear if you have any thoughts, experiences, feedbacks, or if you have anything to build on what I'm saying here. So I hope we can continue the conversation down in the comments as well. And I hope these thoughts are helpful. If you've ever been in a situation where you have to talk to people that just refuse to believe that what they do matter. Because we're in July and it's also Plastic-Free July, we're also focusing a lot on this channel on specifically consumer impact, consumer action, and what we can do. Because while we don't have all the responsibility and we can't change everything by ourselves, there's a lot of things that consumers can do that are incredibly impactful. We can push for change within ourselves, within our communities, within our local environments, and within the structures we live in. And if you've had similar experiences to me, I hope you feel validated that I am just as pissed off about it as you are. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you liked it. If you did, you can leave me a thumbs up. That will make my day. And you can also subscribe to this channel if you want to hear more about consumer impact, but also about the impact that comes from other places than just the consumer cycle. Thank you so much for watching. Have an amazing day and take really good care of yourselves. Until next time. Bye. Thank you so much for watching this video, and also a special thank you to my Patreon supporters. You guys help me create green, zero-waste content, and I love you guys. You can find the links to my social media accounts down below and the link to my Patreon on this screen. Bye!